How's it going, everyone? I am back with another video. This is going to be my week 9 recap video where just dive into all the games here, kind of break down my thought process as to how I interpreted the games pretty much. So just dive straight in here. So the first game was Texans and Jets. This was the Thursday game. The Jets were a favorite in this game, which surprised me a little bit, probably in part due to the injuries the Texans are dealing with. They obviously Collins been out a couple weeks, and now Diggs is out for the year. I picked the Jets to win this game. It's just kind of a gut feeling. They obviously ended up doing so. The first half was not very pretty, just for as a football game in general. It was a scoreless first quarter. Texans it looked like they were going to score, and then Stroud got strip sacked. Uh, or not strip sack, but he just got the ball stripped out of his hand. And yeah, it was just the Jets had a good drive going. They ran like a trick play reverse to their rookie wide receiver, and he pulled a DeSean Jackson and fumbled the ball short of the goal line there, and that resulted in a touchback. So that might be his last snaps he sees for a while. But yeah, the Texans ended up scoring. Joe Mixon had a pretty good game. He yeah, I kind of expected him to. He's gotten a heavy workload all year, especially with all the receivers out. 24 carries for a buck six and a touchdown. So yeah, that was the only touchdown the Texans got in the game. Jets defense played pretty good. Yeah, and obviously the Texans have been very visibly missing Nico Collins and now obviously Diggs too. Stroud didn't really have a great game. He only completed 11 passes out of 30 attempts. Obviously, that's not a great completion percentage. Yeah, that second half though, the Jets had a couple drives in the first half where they looked decent, but they just couldn't score. Their first try, there was a miscue with Adams on a go ball. It looked like, and it was just sloppy miscommunications. The second half, they cleaned it up. Their offense came alive. They scored in the third. I think they scored on their opening drive, if I remember right. And in the fourth quarter, they had that insane touchdown to Garrett Wilson, and then they hit another touchdown that iced the game to Adams there, which won me a boosted parlay. So that was nice. I finally caught a break betting. But yeah, the Rodgers looked pretty good. Obviously, the start, no, not really. The offense looked completely out of sync like it has for a good portion of the year at the start of the game. Breece Hall got a good amount of carries, pretty solid game. Yeah, Coyle is their rookie wide receiver. I mentioned that DeSean Jackson did right at the goal line. Devontae had a pretty good game. It looks like he got concussed, and it didn't look like he was going to come back in the game, but he ended up getting that touchdown to ice the game pretty much. Garrett Wilson, really good game. He's been playing pretty well the past couple weeks. Obviously, that insane touchdown catch I mentioned. Yeah, Jets defense I mentioned, they played pretty good. Texans defense played pretty good too. There was a sequence in this game where the Jets they stopped the Texans and they hit a self for a field goal. The Texans and there was a penalty on the Jets, and then the Texans ended up having to still settle for a field goal. And if I remember, I think Fairbairn missed it. So that was just the Texans caught a break, just weren't able to capitalize. The end of the game there, they kicked the field goal to make it an 8 point game. Went for the onside, just weren't able to get it. Just look at the stats here. Fairly close to the total yards, passing yards. Jets had a about 60 more around there, a little bit less. Yards per play, Jets yard more per play. Rush yards, like I said, Mixon heavy workload. Jets had a pretty decent rushing day. No, not great, but pretty decent. Yeah, the Texans. A lot of these stats are kind of more so in the first half that favor the Texans. Although they did, as soon as the Jets took the lead, they went straight down the field. Stroud had a nice pass to Tank Dell that got him down the field pretty quickly. I think it was like their first play on the drive. Um, yeah, penalties kind of sloppy both sides. Texans, I feel like have gotten penalized a lot this year. Third downs. just kind of like average, not great. Jets, actually, that's pretty not horrible, but not awful. But yeah, this was a pretty ugly game in the first half, and then the second half, Jets kind of came alive. Texans offense was like decently efficient, but they were just struggling to put points up on the board, obviously. Here's the yeah, it was a 50-yard pass, the one I was just talking about to Tank Dell. Obviously the Wilson catch there, the touchdown. But this game kind of went, even though the Jets were 2-6 entering, the Texans are 6-2 going into the game. It kind of went as my gut was telling me a little bit. Maybe I thought the Jets were going to kind of control like the game early on, is what my gut said, but I kind of felt good about them winning this game. They ended up winning, so maybe they can get their season back on track, stockpile some wins. The Texans have just, I mentioned it a couple of my videos, they just, even though they're winning, some games they just do not look like overly impressive to me. So obviously losing to the Jets with them struggling as much as they are is just not very good. And of course they're dealing with injuries. Obviously their top two wideouts but are missing, but just this is a game that you really wanted to win, obviously. But Jets, good win. Hopefully they can get their season back on track for them. Well, I'm not rooting for them. I'm a Patriots fan, but for them, I mean, like their fan base, I mean. Oh boy, this game. Oh boy. So, like an idiot, I put money on the Saints. My picks video, I mentioned like I logically do not see like many reasons that the Panthers could win this game. And I just said it's going to have to just be a weird game, and that's kind of what it was. The Saints, I saw they were the first team like ever to put up like certain stats and lose the game. I mean, just look at these stats here, and please explain to me how the Saints lost this game. Like seriously, they outplayed them in pretty much every category. They they literally outplayed them in every category from at least the ones here, except penalties that killed them. They had a PI late on Demario Davis, that hurt them. But yeah, the Panthers' offense looked pretty good. It they were up early. They were up 7-6, and the Saints ended up scoring. So they were up 16-7 at the 13-10 at half, I mean. Um Trying to remember. It was like 13-10 at the half. And then, yeah, the Panthers, the third quarter, they took the lead. And then the fourth quarter, the Saints got a touchdown. They went for two, didn't get it. And then they forced a punt. And then they just weren't able to do anything with it. And then they forced another punt, and they weren't able to do anything with it, punted. And then Bryce Young and company had put together a pretty good drive, took the lead there. Saints got to around like the 40 or like midfield, somewhere around there, and they failed to convert on a deep ball to Cedric Wilson for a fourth down conversion. That was the game there. But if the Saints had won, I would have won multiple parlays. And so, of course, they put up these stats, and they're the first team to lose when putting up certain stats compared to their opponent ever. So, of course, when I bet on them, I won't be betting on the Saints again this season until they prove something to me, which I don't think they will. They just fired Dennis Allen, uh, named their special teams coach, the interim head coach. They're just a dumpster fire right now, kind of. Going to be interesting to see how their offseason goes. Panthers, I guess, were due for a win. That's really like the only logic that I can kind of string this up as. They were due for a win. It's a division game, so those could be tight. Obviously, the first game wasn't tight week one, but yeah, just kind of a weird game. Just looking at those stats I showed here, you think the Saints would have blown them out. They should have, but they didn't. Derek Carr looked pretty solid in his return. Yeah, Kamara had a big day. He had a lot of receptions. Yeah, he had 6 catches, 2 for 60. So he had a really big game. Yeah, Bryce Young looked like serviceable. The pick wasn't his fault. It was an absolute insane play by the DB where Legate or Xavier Legate, however the hell he pronounces his name, Legate. I like every commentator pronounces it freaking differently. But he like placed it perfectly in his hands, and then the DB ripped it out. So that was really on Bryce Young. That last drive, there was a 3rd and 10. He had a big throw to who the hell was it? I think it was Leggett again that he threw it to. Pretty sure. And then there's the PI, I think the next play. And then, yeah, they end up scoring. And then the Saints, as I mentioned, failed to convert on 4th, and that was the game after that. But just kind of a weird game in this one. I don't know how the Saints lost. I really don't. Just kind of a weird game in this one. Yeah, Chuba Hubbard getting a good amount of carries in. He had a decent game. Pretty solid. I won 2 touchdowns. Yeah, that's pretty solid, obviously. What else from this game? Taysom Hill, it helps that he's been back. Yeah, they rush him a lot. Obviously, direct snaps to the quarterback. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered all the main points in that game. Just kind of a weird game in that one. Commanders Giants. Kind of another weird game. So Daniel Jones at halftime had 0 passing yards, but he had a touchdown. So I really, off the top of my head, I don't think that's ever happened in my lifetime. Just a weird game. And he was their leading rusher. He had like 5 rushes, like 50 yards up to that point. It was really weird. Then the second half, the Giants offense played pretty well. Daniel Jones actually had a pretty good game. Jane Daniels also had a pretty good game. Brian Robinson was out, so they had Rodriguez in there for Washington. So he played pretty good. Tyrone Tracy been super underrated all year. He played a pretty good game. Went off against the Steelers the previous week. Neighbors consistent as usual. Noah Brown's had a couple good games, pretty good one. And this one, yeah, also Noah Brown's the one that caught the Hail Mary, if I remember right. So I 2 pretty good games in a row for him. Yeah, Daniels played well, Rodriguez played well. Yep. Oh yeah, there was a sequence in this game. The end of the first half was like 3rd and 16 or 19 or something. Jane Daniels just like checked it down to get some extra yards, make the field goal earlier, as a team typically would in that situation. And they ended up getting the first, and then McLaurin caught a touchdown pass. He got 2 in the game, and he caught 1. So that's a complete blown opportunity for the Giants. That's 4 points right there that the Commanders should not have had if the Giants had capitalized. Yeah, Danny Dimes played good. Yeah, Neighbors I mentioned consistent. Theo Johnson had the Giants at the end of the game there was interesting. They scored, made it a game, then they had to burn their timeouts, and the Commanders got it right down to the goal line and were able to just kneel the ball out to seal the win. But yeah, Theo Johnson, just about to say that touchdown catch. I think he caught 2 passes on their last drive, one of them being that touchdown catch. So looking at the stats here, it was a kind of an even game. I figured the Giants might be able to steal this one. I talked about it in my picks video for this week, but this past week rather. But I picked the Commanders, but I wouldn't have been. The Giants are like bad, but I don't think they're as bad as like a lot of people say they are. Yeah, rush yards pretty even, especially because they should have beaten them the first time if friggin' Graham Gano didn't get hurt. And then I think the Giants, when they scored their first touchdown, their kicker, who they signed off the practice squad, like narrowly made the PAT. So it's just friggin' something is like anytime they play the Commanders for the season, for some reason, their kickers are just something's off with their kickers for whatever reason. Um, yeah, pretty even with these stats here. Yeah, Giants lost a fumble. Who lost the? I think it was Daniel Jones. I can't remember who lost the fumble off the top of my head for the Giants, but someone did. Yeah, this was a just kind of a weird game the way it played out. The Commanders in the second half kind of took control. The Giants were like right there within shouting distance. They had a touchdown late with Danny Dimes broke off like 2 tackles, got in, and the Commanders ended up scoring after that. And then that was the Giants, like the Theo Johnson touchdown drive I was just talking about after that. made it interesting, but just couldn't finish it off there. Commanders able to get a solid win against like a not great but pretty gritty and I was going to say another word, just blanked on it, but a pretty gritty, tough Giants team in the division when there was a tight game the first time. They ended up winning this one too, so good for the Commanders. Obviously, they're on the right track. They just traded for Lattimore, so obviously that's going to address their secondary and more specifically corner weakness. So yeah, that's a good trade the Commanders just pulled off with Lattimore there. Pretty solid one in that one for them. Dolphins Bills, this was a lot closer than a lot of people thought. The Dolphins are bad, but a lot of their losses have been like pretty close. Even with when they had Huntley in there and then even he got hurt and they had to have Tim Boyle come in, like that Colts game, for example. Even that game was close. They were up 10-0 that game, probably should have won it. And then obviously last week the Cardinals, they probably should have won that game. They were in control, kind of blew it a little. But the obviously the Bills have been red hot for most of the season. They've been playing well the past couple weeks, and yeah, so obviously week 2 these teams played, and the Bills just swatted the Dolphins, blew them out. So a lot of people were expecting that because the Bills usually take care of business in games like this. They've kind of blown the Dolphins out in the past couple of years. They've had a couple games in Buffalo last year. The Bills just swatted them. It was towards the beginning of the year. I forget exactly what week it was, but it was somewhere in the beginning of last year. But yeah, Tua played great in this game. He only had 3 incompletions. He had 231 and 2 touchdowns. The Dolphins have been running the ball pretty well. They kind of relied on that since Tua was out, and then maybe they found something there. They found it certainly against us at Foxborough a couple weeks ago. Their run game kind of killed us in that one, especially that last drive. But yeah, pretty good rushing day, pretty even carries there. Achane had 2 more than Mostert. It's pretty balanced there. Tyreek, pretty, typical game from him, I guess. Achane, he had 58 receiving yards in addition to his 63 rushing, so that's a big game. Waddle, this stat line's kind of skewed because it was the last play of the game. He ran backwards and lost a bunch of yardage. That's where this stat line is coming from. Yeah, Josh Allen played pretty good per usual. The pick wasn't fully on him. It's just he kind of fastballed it in there to his receiver, and it just bounced off him, and then Ramsey ended up picking it off. It's maybe a little bit on him for the fastball, but not really. So the receiver should have caught that. Not much in the run game from the Bills. Yeah, receiving. Yeah, Ray Davis had a short pass or catch that went the distance. Shakir's kind of been very underrated. He's had a good game in this one. Kincaid, 4 for 32. Yep. Hollins had that touchdown catch. He's kind of been a bit underrated. Yeah, just stats here. So pretty even game. The Dolphins, again, they outgained them in yards. They definitely could have won this game. They were up at the half. It was 10-6. The Bills kind of had an weird end of the half sequence with penalties and stuff. They just settled for a field goal. Then the third quarter, the Dolphins fumbled it. They were having a pretty good open drive. They fumbled it. And then the Bills from that point on, it was just touched every team. I think after that fumble, every team, or both teams rather, scored a touchdown every possession in the second half, except the Bills at the end of the game. They had the 60-yard something. I think it was maybe 60 exact yard field goal from Bass to win it for them. So another close loss to the Dolphins. They're 2-6. They really got to start stockpiling some wins. They want to make a playoff push, which I imagine they definitely want to do, obviously. So, yeah, they a couple close losses I mentioned, but so they're probably really, really pissed off that they're dropping these games that are winnable. Like those 3, even if they just won those 3 games, that could get them up to 5 wins. They could be 5-3 or 5-2 realistically. So, yeah, or 5-3 rather. I mean, can't do some math here. Yeah, this is a pretty good back and forth game though. I had the Bills in my parlay, even though I kind of had a sneaking suspicion that the can't talk that the Dolphins might end up winning this game, or not, maybe not winning it, but it could be competitive, and that's exactly what it was. Look at the Dolphins were. I thought they were going to go for two at the end when Waddle got that touchdown, but they didn't, and the Bills ended up winning. They maybe got a little fortunate with the unnecessary roughness call that helped set them up in field goal range, but yeah, they definitely played well enough to win the game. But the Dolphins probably should have ended up holding on to this one. But this is definitely a really good game. Um, Chargers Browns. So this game went kind of how I expected. I didn't expect the Chargers, I don't think, to win by this much. I expected it to be relatively close. Of course, the Browns could have won this game, was my thought process. But I picked the Chargers just because I thought Jameis Winston was going to look like the Jameis Winston that's been primarily on the bench the past couple years. That Ravens game I mentioned, he got away with a couple passes that should have been picked, especially that Hamilton one at the end of the game that would have won it for the Ravens. And I said he probably wasn't going to get away with those passes in this game, and that's exactly what happened. He threw three picks. And this one, Chargers defense been super stout, very well coached all year, took advantage. Their passing game is coming alive. Past couple weeks, the Chargers. Herbert played pretty good. 18, 27, 282, two touchdowns. His two touchdowns came on. Well, one of them was like blown coverage on like third and like 23 or something, or 21 or something like that. And then the other one, yeah, was Quentin Johnson and was wide open deep, and Herbert found him, hit him for the touchdown there. But yeah, the Browns offense really struggled in this one. I don't think they scored their touchdown until like the absolute end of, and it was like complete garbage time. But yeah, the Chargers have at least I going into this week, I assume so after this week, they only allowed 10 points. Still have the number one scoring defense in football, so that's really impressive. We're actually more than halfway through the year now, which is insane to say, the regular season at least. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting notifications on my watch here. Okay. But yeah, Dobbins played pretty well. He's been pretty good all year. Two touchdowns in this one. Quentin Johnson, he's starting to finally look like the player that the Chargers hopes he would when they picked him that high. McConkey's been coming alive the past couple weeks. Josh Palmer, and he caught the I think the 3rd and 21 touchdown I just mentioned. Yeah, pretty good game for the Chargers. Winston didn't look very great in this one. Nick Chubb obviously still finding his way back. Just kind of a tough matchup against the Chargers defense. Cedric Tillman played pretty good stat line there. He's been getting more targets since Winston's been in. Same with Elijah Moore. He obviously didn't play great in this one, but um, yeah, it was definitely low scoring to start. Browns probably upset with themselves that they're giving up blown coverage touchdowns in what was a low scoring game for a while. But yeah, the Chargers definitely outplayed them. They certainly deserved to win this game. And yeah, I think these stats are just pretty telling of how the game was. Surprised the Browns got that many more first downs. Again, a lot of it was because the Chargers were getting like big chunk plays there. Pause. Yeah, time possession 25 to 34 or 26 if you round up for the Chargers there. Penalties pretty low for both teams. Yeah, 20 more plays the Browns ran. Yeah, they uh-oh. Oh boy, my chat's blowing up. What's happening? Oh God. But one of my buddies just said something funny. But anyway, yeah, kind of a weird game in this one, or not a weird game, but kind of went as I expected. Some people were picking the Browns that their offense could carry over from the prior week against Baltimore, but it didn't. The Chargers just took care of business and they kind of a grinded out. Maybe not grind out to put up 27, won by 17, and again that Browns touchdown came in garbage time if I remember right. But yeah, this game was a pretty interesting game to watch. Glad the Chargers won. I'm a big Jim Harbaugh guy, and I like Herbert and the Chargers. So I'm glad to see them pushing a are trying to make a push to the playoffs there. I think they get a good shot. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. My team, my team. Here we go. I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick before I talk about this game. Okay. So this game kind of went as I expected to, except the result. Obviously, I picked us to win. One thing I did get right is I thought we might be able to get a couple of good punt returns that could help turn the tide of the games. The Titans special teams is just like historically awful this year so far, at least. And Marcus Jones is a pretty good punt returner, so that went for us. Marcus Jones did a couple good punt returns, especially that one that set us up like midfield around the 50, where May ended up getting the game tying drive there. The touchdown as time expired. But yeah, Titans opening drive, went down the field, scored. We didn't really have anything on offense. We had a field goal. Sly missed a field goal. It was a really long one. It was like 56, I want to say, and I think the one he made was 51. May ended up he had a pick in the I'll have to watch the film, but I've only watched like the broadcast. Well, you two, but obviously the last pass of the game for us, and then the other one, it kind of looked bad just from the broadcasting view. I'll have to look at it from like a film perspective, but it definitely was not a great looking interception. Of course, not a pick is going to look great, but just it definitely seemed like it was more on May, at least from the broadcast perspective. At least if I'm remembering it right. Maybe I'm thinking of something else or I'm not picturing it correctly or whatever. But yeah, then the second half we went down the field, score, we were up 10-3. Then Titans had a drive at the end, towards the end of the quarter. I think it was 10-10 going into the fourth. Titans scored. We were down 10-17, and yeah, then looks like May going to be clutch. Had a big pass to Kendrick Bourne. Or it was kind of a shorter pass, but Kendrick Bourne got a lot of yards after it, a lot of yak there, yards after catch, and what a surprise! Penalty on our offensive line. So it got called back. I think Pop Douglas was open deep. May wasn't able to connect with them. We had the punt defense got the ball back for us, and then May obviously led that drive at the end there, that absolute insane last play. He was just running around looking for someone, just heaved it up, and Stevenson ended up catching it. Just an amazing play by May and everyone involved there. Then OT was really hoping we could get the ball. To start, we didn't. Our defense got absolutely gashed in the run game. Pollard went off. How many rush yards did he have in this game? Yeah, 28 carries for 128 yards. So yeah, big game from Pollard. Overtime, we ended up stopping them. We caught a little break. They muffed the snap. They had their backup center in there. A couple high snaps that Mason Rudolph had to kind of corral in by himself. And yeah, so we caught a break there. It was like third and I want to say 3 when that happened. So if they got that first down, they were probably just going to keep running it right into the end zone to win the game. But yeah, we forced field goal in overtime. Our defense did. May, nice scramble to start the drive there. I think 2 plays in, sitting down, he got a scramble for us. And then he had that post route to it was a play action post shot to Booty, and then the safety just picked May off. I don't know if May just didn't see the safety. I'm gonna have to look at it on the film, but instead of just the broadcast view. But yeah, obviously they picked it off, and that was the game there. But May, I'm really happy with. I think he's looked really good for us so far. Really happy with what he's been doing. He looks really good. Love that he scrambles. He's gonna start sliding more. He friggin' dove like head first early on in the scramble. That coming back from a concussion, he's gonna be careful there, especially like later in his career when stuff like that starts to mount up. Probably it's like why Tyler Lockett is so smart, just falls down before getting hit. Probably preserved a lot of his career there and a lot of pain that could have been avoided. Probably I think May had 90 rush yards in this. Yeah, 95 rush yards. After that, we had absolutely 0 run game, which I almost bet Stevenson's over too, so I'm glad I didn't. Um, yeah, May looked good. Those two picks I mentioned. Hunter Henry's been pretty good since May. I mean, I've liked Hunter Henry ever since we got him in 2021, but he looked pretty good in this game. Caught that fourth down at the end there to help a couple plays later that tying touchdown as time expired. Bourne, not like a fantastic game, but he had a couple catches in this one. He looked pretty good. Definitely his probably his best game since he's came back from the injury. Uh, Pop Douglas, a lot of receptions, not a lot of yards. Booty, it seems like not so much in this game, but it seems like May and him have a connection there. Um, yeah, that's that. Yeah, Rudolph played fairly well. Pollard, I mentioned, played well. Really, their receivers here kind of nice balanced stats there. Nick Vannett had the touchdown in the opening drive. It was actually in like a nice design block and release play. It was very nice play design there. Yeah, the just look at the stats here. The Titan. I mean, we could have won this game, but the Titans, I do think outplayed us and probably did deserve to win. Just looking at these stats, that suggests that too. Yeah, penalties. That was a big talking point. Very sloppy. 18 accepted penalties. And yeah, just that was a big story in this game. Pretty, pretty. These stats I just think are pretty good story that tell this game pretty well there. Um, I'm getting some more text here. Yeah. So yeah, trying to think of anything else to this game. Hmm. Yeah, I think I covered it pretty well. Patriots 2-7. I mean, I didn't have very high hopes. I think I predicted us get 4 wins, go 4-13, but my preseason predictions at least. But I still root for my team every week, and especially a game like this where we against a Titans team that's bad. Going into the game, we had a better record than them, and they're coming off a loss. They lost 52-14 to the Lions, and we ended up losing this game. So that was just bad. That was not very good. Uh, yeah, we obviously had 3 turnovers, so in a 3-point game, defensive battle, that's going to be showing. Well, one of them was at the end, but literally the last play of the game. The pick Rudolph had, it was a deflected pass. So yeah, we ended up capitalizing there. Caught a breather on that one. But yeah, my team just like makes me depressed watching them. We are just so bad. It's just so disheartening to watch my team now. Cowboys Falcons, so I think the scores are a pretty good indicator of this game. The Falcons were leading most of it, but the Cowboys were right there for a good portion of the game. They ended up scoring late and getting the 2-point conversion in the onside. A big story, obviously, from this one is Dak got hurt. I think they placed him. I can't remember if they placed him on IR, but they said he's going to miss a couple weeks. I can't remember if they placed him on IR now. All right, now it's bothering me. I'm going to have to look it up. Give me 1 second here. Um, Dak Prescott. I want to say yes, but I'm not sure. But it's bothering me. Oh, wonderful. Dak Prescott might need season-ending surgery on hamstring, per report. Oh boy. Well, obviously that happens. He'll be going on IR, I imagine. Jesus. That well, there even if Dak played the rest of the season, the Cowboys are just heading in the wrong direction. They might be able to have squeaked out somehow go on some run maybe when they get Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence back to somehow make a playoff push. But even so, I'd probably lean towards finishing like 8-9, 9-8, maybe. God, my friggin' phone just went off. Why the hell do I have an alarm set at 6:50? Oh, I set my morning alarm for 6:15. I just did PM by accident. Just scared the shit out of me. My reader's on like full blast. My God. Um, no, Jesus, not my head spinning. I forget what I was just talking about here. Yeah, like 7, 10, 8, and probably I don't know, probably 8, 9, 9, and 8. They would have finished if Dak was able to play the rest of this year. Cooper Rush is honestly serviceable. Like if their defense can hold opponents to like somewhere in like the 20s, I think Cooper Rush could be like serviceable and put up a good amount of points and get them some wins. Obviously, Dak is better though. Just the stats here, Dak, he didn't play great, but not awful. He had a touchdown throw. It was insane to Rico Dowdle here. It was a Prescott like was running, then he ended up the pass like deflected, then bobbled, then Dowdle caught again. That was insane. Kirk Cousins played really good in this one, really efficient game. The Cowboys defense, it was on one of his touchdowns on a blown coverage, and it was just Cowboys defense just been bad most of this year. Obviously, they're missing their top two guys on defense with Parsons and D-Law. Well, Parsons is number one, but D-Law, you can make an argument, I guess, for number two there. But Dowdle looked pretty good rushing. He's had a pretty sneaky underrated year. Zeke was not playing this one. They disciplined him. He showed up like late to a team meeting, I think they said. CeeDee Lamb, they ran a jet sweep. It got blown up on fourth down. Mike McCarthy was pissed on the sideline. He's going to get fired. If he makes it to, well, I don't think they'll fire him mid-season, but if he's still their coach going into next year, I'll be surprised. I think even Jerry Jones has to see that they have to move on from Mike McCarthy. And granted, they're dealing with injuries, more especially defensively, and this roster on paper is probably the worst Cowboys team over the past couple years. But still, just Mike McCarthy is just he's not been able to win big with the Cowboys. They good regular seasons, except 2020, when obviously Dak was out that year for most of it after he broke his ankle there. But yeah, just ever since then, just 12-win seasons, stuff like that. Yeah, they went 12-5 in 22 and 23, and they were out in the divisional in 22 against the Niners. And they obviously got blown out by the Packers in the wild card last year. So I'm surprised he honestly didn't get fired after that game. Just if you look at the score of that game, it's closer than it suggests. The Cowboys ended up scoring a bunch of points late to make it closer. The Packers completely dominated them. But not to get off topic from this game specifically, yeah, just receiving the Cowboys, they've had no run game all year pretty much. And again, Dowdle looked decent this one. A couple games for Dowdle's were good in. Pretty underrated season, I mentioned, but just mostly they have no run game. Ferguson played pretty good. Lamb, not great, but okay. Well, he was hurt at the end there. I assume he's fine now. But Cousins, I mentioned, had a great game. Bijan, they keep trying to balance it out here, and they had more rush attempts than pass attempts. So even if you don't count the kneel downs there, but yeah, Kirk played a really efficient game. At least I'm going to assume these were kneel. I don't remember off the top of my head, but well, one of them must not have been if it's negative 11 yards. But trying to think of what the hell if like Cousins scrambled backwards or he got sacked, something like I don't know. I don't know what the hell happened. Yeah, Mooney played pretty good, caught a touchdown. Drake London had a touchdown. He got hurt in this game. I don't know how long term his injury is. Let me look that up while I'm at it, or else that's going to bother me too. Giannis will play versus Jazz. I just got. That's what the Jazz wanted to see. Well, the Bucks are freaking horrible this year anyway, so they gotta friggin' figure some things out. Speaking of teams that need to figure things out, Wogs a limited practice. Kyle Pitts limited too, so of course he's on my fantasy team. I desperately need a big performance out of this week, so I'm sure he won't play with my luck. But yeah, London I assume is going to be good to go this upcoming week. Maybe a bit limited. Who knows? Look at the stats here. Looking at these stats, it's maybe a little surprising to me, at least, the way the game went. The Falcons had control most of this game. The Cowboys, it was one of those games, though, the Falcons had control, and the Cowboys are like right there. It looked like they might be able to make a late push and steal it. They have a tendency to do that sometimes. And I mentioned it when I was picking this game that these are the games the Cowboys win a lot of the time. They're underdogs. Not a lot of people are expecting them to win. They're kind of playing like shit right now, or going into the game. Just not great football overall as a team. And the Falcons are playing really good. And those against Cowboys kind of have a tendency to win sometimes, but obviously that didn't happen. So the Falcons took care of business. Yeah, just looking at these stats here, Cowboys had better stats than a lot of these categories here. It's a little surprising to me, honestly. Yeah, neither team. Well, the Falcons had one fumble. I think that was on Cousins, I want to say. But yeah, just looking at these stats, you would think that the Cowboys turned the ball over something. They did that jet sweep. I think the Falcons scored a touchdown off of, so that was a big point in the game. But yeah, just Falcons take control most of this one. Cowboys are playing catch up. It was right there. Obviously, Dak, the big story in that one. But Falcons, good win against not great, but obviously not awful Cowboys teams. Good for them to get that win under their belt. Raiders Bengals. This game kind of went as I expected. I really don't think there's too much to talk about this game. The Raiders are just a disaster right now. Bengals offense got back on track. Burrow had 5 touchdowns. The pick was it was a pick 6 from Jack Jones, my old guy from New England. He's like the friggin' king of pick 6s on screen passes. He had one against the Chargers debacle for the Chargers last year when the Raiders put up, I think, 63 against them. He had a pick 6 off a wide receiver screen. Chase Brown, a lot of carries in this one. Alexander Mattison, the Raiders fit absolutely 0 run. They have to be like historically one of the worst run teams in NFL history, just based off this year. Jakobi Meyers, 2 good weeks in a row as their top receiver. I love that. I love Jakobi Meyers. Really wish we could have kept him in New England. They benched Minshew again. And I think when they benched him was after the pick 6, and the Raiders defense forced a shot, and there was like 8 minutes left in the game. It was a 2-score game, so they didn't bench him because the game was over. Because they still could, it would have taken a lot, but it was still, they could have made it interesting. They could have maybe tied it or tried to win it there. If a lot of things would have had to go their way. But Ritter hit a touchdown like right at the end there to Brock Bowers. The Raiders offense did like nothing. So you take away the garbage time drive. That's 17 points, and the pick 6 was obviously 6, and the extra point 7. So they really only scored like 10 points offensively and then if you 17 if you include the garbage time touchdown. But yeah, I mentioned Jakobi Meyers played good. Brock Bowers been really underrated this year. Burrow, 5 tutties, played really good. Really efficient game from the Bengals offense. They've been really good this year outside of those couple weeks where they didn't look great. Bengals defense been picking it up the past couple weeks. Competition hasn't been the greatest, but still they're playing pretty well. Gesicki, he's had an underrated year. He got 2 touchdowns in this one. Jamar didn't do too much in this game. A little bit quiet from him. But yeah, just look at the stats here. The Bengals definitely outplayed them. Certainly deserved to win this game. The stats here are pretty telling of how the game went, I think. Just better stats in like all these categories. Bengals gonna start cleaning up some penalties though. The pick I mentioned with the pick 6 on the screen from Jack Jones there. Just maybe just wide receiver screens aren't the Bengals thing this year. They had the pick 6 Jack Jones, then they had the 2 bubble screens that we stopped on 4th down, and then the Eagles stopped last week. So maybe the wide receiver screens aren't the thing or whatever. But yeah, just they needed this win. They took care of business. Raiders just a dumpster fire. Antonio Pierce is also probably going to be fired. So not mid-season, I don't think, but probably same with Mike McCarthy after the year ends. So yeah, just I thought the Raiders could be interesting this year, but they're just not it. At least so far. Maybe who knows? Maybe they somehow go on a win streak here, but who knows? Bengals, they play the Ravens tonight on Thursday Night Football. That's going to be an interesting game to see how that one pans out. But yeah, they needed this win. They did it. Took care of business. Good game. Kind of went as I expected. Broncos. So this game also kind of went as I expected. Broncos came into this game obviously pretty much red hot. Ravens coming off that upset loss to the Giants, or not the Giants, the Browns there. I don't know how the hell I just got those two teams mixed up. But well, they're pretty like on the same level. Giants are probably a little bit better than they're not even a little bit, but maybe I not a little, but not like a lot. Somewhere in the middle, better than them this year, I think. But maybe that's why I was thinking of them. But yeah, anyway, Ravens just had control of this game early on. It was interesting. Nick's his interception wasn't on him. It was just I think it was Sutton. It just bounced off his hands on a basic bootleg and was tipped into the air, and or not tipped into the air, but just bounced off his hands, went in the air, and the Ravens ended up picking it off. And then the Broncos defense, they still forced they got a sack on Lamar, got him out of field goal range. But then the Ravens, the Ravens were out. They scored. They were at a big lead. Broncos, they scored in the Philly special. I guess the Denver special. I want to call it that. So it was, I think, 10-7 at that point in the Ravens' favor. But from that point on, the Ravens just scored. They moved up and down the field. Lamar looked good. Derrick Henry looked good. Obviously, a big game for him. Zay Flowers looked good. He's been super underrated, like just his whole career. It's only his second year, but last year he was super underrated, super consistent. Great year. Yeah, the Courtland Sutton finally had like a really good, not breakout game, so we know what Courtland Sutton is, but just like a big game for him where he scored over 100 yards, or not scored, caught over 100 yards worth of passes, and they were just behind, but a majority of the game big, so they had to go pass heavy. Javonte Williams, not great, but okay. Bo Nix is a really good scrambler. He, yeah, Sean Payton said they, Estime, whatever, however he pronounces it, is going to get some more carries, I think, is what Sean Payton said. Yeah, just outside of Sutton, they had pretty much very little production from a receiving standpoint. Javonte Williams, obviously, a running back, is just second leading receiver. That's usually a problem. Yeah, I mentioned this, everything here, I think. Justice Hill to pass on the sideline he caught. Aguilar to deep one he caught. Yeah, just Broncos. It started off like it could be an interesting game, then the Ravens, kind of like how I predicted, just took care of business and light the Broncos up. Broncos are decent, but when they play an elite team like the Ravens, I really don't think they're gonna be able to. I don't want to say compete. Like I think they could compete and maybe sneak away the win, but most of the time I think they're gonna lose and probably by a good margin like this game. Just with the stats here, kind of a bit telling of this game. Broncos got a lot of yards late. They had a sequence there where Sutton got, I think, tackled at the like 1 yard line or 1 inch line, so they probably should have scored there. That they came up just short. Ravens defense obviously a good game. The Broncos defense has been, or well, their defense has been good all year, but their offense has been picking up the past couple weeks, putting up a good amount of points, moving the ball well. So Ravens defense coming off a bad game against the Browns for the most part. Good bounce back win there, or performance there. Well, and a win, but yeah, these stats I just think are pretty telling of how the game went. And yeah, yeah, I just think these stats, if you didn't watch the game, just look at these stats, it's pretty telling of how the game went. Yeah, just kind of went as I expected. Ravens, good win to get back on track. Broncos, I think, will be fine. I'm not too concerned about them. Just not a great game in this one. Okay, I get some water here. Bears Cardinals. So this is kind of a coin flip game for me. I went with the Bears. Obviously, did not pan out for me. I mean, the Bears offense has just been, it was bad at the start of the year, then like towards the middle of the year, we're still kind of in the middle of the year now, but just past the halfway point. But like at least as of now, like the middle weeks up to week 9, I guess is the best way to put it. They were figuring some things out, looked good. And then last week against the Commanders coming off the bye, they looked absolutely abysmal up until that Swift touchdown. Then they turned it on in the fourth quarter there. And then in this game, they looked pretty bad for the most part. They got 3 field goals in the second quarter, and that's it. That's all they got from their offense. Caleb Williams didn't really play too great in this game. Swift, not great, but okay. Odunze had a pretty good game. He had a blown coverage play on the Cardinals' part where he caught a deep pass. Excuse me here. Keenan Allen, kind of a very quiet year for the most part. He played good in that London game. I think caught 2 touchdowns. Besides that, he really has not been getting involved much. DJ Moore, kind of same with him. Kind of not getting involved a lot this year. He had that touchdown catch against the Rams, whereas from that point on, that's when the Bears offense picked it up, and then they just forgot how to play football the past 2 weeks, it seems like. Cardinals, Kyler didn't play great. Bears defense was missing some guys, but they still played fairly well in the first. There was a sequence where they held the Cardinals to a field goal, and then they committed a penalty on the field goal attempt, and the Cardinals ended up scoring a touchdown. So that, in a nutshell, is a good sequence of how this game went, pretty much. James Conner had a really good game. DeMarcado had a good game. There's another end of half sequence to the Bears. The first half, DeMarcado just, I don't know what the hell happened, but with the Bears defense, but he just ran up and down the sideline, and he or just ran up the sideline rather, ended up scoring when the Bears were in full prevent. They allowed it. It was 14-9 at that point. It looked like it was going to be the score at half. DeMarcado gets the touchdown, just wide open lane up the field there on the sideline. So Bears again, another end of half defensive breakdown. Obviously, that's just bad on their part. Yeah, the Bears just Eberflus getting some heat on him. His halftime speech was like probably the worst halftime speech I've ever seen a coach. He just said, like, this is the score, and let's go out there and we have like some good players. Like, what the hell is that speech? Like, I'm not gonna get motivated by that at all. Then DJ Moore, he got asked if Eberflus had lost the locker room. Obviously, he can't say yes, but he just like, I don't think so. Just kind of gave a neutral answer. So a lot of heat on Eberflus. The Bears going to start sacking wins. Fortunate for them, they play us this week, so that's probably another win they'll be getting. But yeah, I mean, I think we could beat the Bears, but I don't think we probably will. I'm there at Soldier Field, so probably not. They're really good at home, but not talk about my predictions, but for this upcoming week. But yeah, just looking at the stats here, pretty telling. Cardinals just they were up, and then that second half. Well, they only scored 8 points. 2 of them were off a safety. So again, the Bears defense, like, not. I don't think they played awful. The Bears defense, if you take away obviously the safety wasn't on them, so that's 27 points the Cardinals scored. And then if you take away that and the end of the first half sequence where they just busted kind of a fluke play, that's only 20 points they're giving up right there. Obviously, it's like a what if scenario, but still 20 points to a Cardinals team and you're missing some guys defensively. Pretty solid day if you take away a couple plays there. Obviously, that's not how it works. The reality is Cardinals scored 29, but Bears, that's why Eberflus, he probably needs to be fired. Probably he saved his job last year, that win streak towards the end of the year, where they finished, I think, 5-2, finished the year 7-10. But I mean, Eberflus, if you fire him, he's doing a really good job coaching that defense. Bears defense is really, really good. So they just got to figure their offense out, which they probably should try. If they fire Eberflus, Ben Johnson, I think, is the perfect candidate to help Caleb Williams there. Shane Waldron, I mean, they need to consider fire. They can't do it mid-season, but at the end of the year, if this offense is putting up numbers like this the rest of the year, they need to probably fire him too. Cardinals stack, I think, 3 straight wins for them. Or let me think. Yeah, 3 straight wins for the Cardinals here. 5-4, they're leading their division, so that's interesting. Not a lot of people would have predicted that. I don't think at the start of the year. But yeah, look at these stats. Yeah, I looked at these stats I think a minute ago, but yeah, just pretty close in a lot of these categories. Bears went for 4 fourth downs in this game for half of them. Third down efficiency awful for the Bears. Um, not great for the Cardinals, but okay. Yeah, pretty. Bears only had 6 penalties, but some of them were pretty costly. Obviously, that field goal one was probably the most costly, led to an additional 4 points. But yeah, Cardinals just stacking some wins together, playing good football, good solid win against a good Bears team. Good for them. Bears, again, I mentioned it. Luckily, they play us, so won't have to do too much to get back on track because we are just so awful. This was an interesting game. Jags Eagles. So this game started as I expected it to. The Eagles were up 22-0 and just dominating the game. And the Jags had a touchdown drive. And then shortly after, Barkley fumbled, Jags scoop and score. And it was a game again. They got two-point conversions. So it was 16-22. A lot of heat on Sirianni because I think he went for two. I think two separate times, and he failed to get both of them. So it's weird. If I guess the Eagles finish with a good record and maybe make it deep in the playoffs, they can't really fire Sirianni. But like if they fall, maybe the wild card, they lose in the playoffs, maybe that's a reason to fire him. But he's just really he gets so much shit, but they're winning. I don't think it's because of him. I think he got carried by Steichen and Gannon the year they went to the Super Bowl. And then last year they were good to start the year, and they were obviously 10-1, but they were getting a lot of lucky fluke things to bounce their way. They were playing good, so I don't mean to discredit them, but they were getting a lot of lucky things to bounce their way during that hot streak they had. And then the back half of the year after that Niners game, they just completely collapsed, and coaching was very evident, and that bad coaching was very evident. Now he's got yeah, he has Kellen Moore calling the offense and Vic Fangio calling the defense. So really two good coordinators there. So I just think Sirianni kind of honestly just along for the ride. So I think they need. I know I can't say that they can't like achieve what they want to with or I don't know how to word it. They're capable of winning like a Super Bowl with Sirianni. So obviously they came very close against the Chiefs. Probably should have won that game. But I just think it's probably best for them to move on from Sirianni, even though they're 6-2. They've been playing really well lately. If they played like when they were up 22-0, they played like that the rest of the game, they would have been fine. And it would have been like, all right, yep, the Eagles are back in business, that elite team that they have the ability to be. But Jags, also, I thought Brian Thomas is out a couple weeks, I saw, but I guess not. He had a touchdown in this, or I think the 2-point conversion in this one, maybe. I think it was the 2-point conversion. Let me see. Yeah, it must have been the 2-point conversion. Yeah, Devontae Smith had an insane touchdown catch in this one. Trevor Lawrence, very mixed game. He played absolutely horrible at the start, had an abysmal stat line, and in the second half, he was playing really well. At the end of the game there, they could have stole it. Once the Eagles missed that field goal, I thought the Jags were honestly going to steal the game. And they had it. They could have taken the lead with like a minute and a half left, and then Lawrence threw a pick. Maybe the Eagles would have gotten into... Honestly, the Eagles probably would have gotten into field goal range anyway. And Elliott probably would have made the kick to win the game, even if they did score there, the Jags. But who knows? I also kind of thought the Eagles were going to win in a similar situation back in week 2 when the Falcons ended up scoring. I thought the Eagles were going to get into field goal range. Obviously there was less time, different situations, but thought they were going to end up winning that one, pulling it off, but they didn't. So who knows what would have happened, but obviously we have to base off of what did happen. Yeah, so very mixed day for Lawrence. Pretty much no run game from the Jags here. I mean, you got to give your backs more than 11 combined, well, I guess 13 combined carries. Lawrence had a couple rushes too. Evan Ingram, he's been big for their offense since he's came back. He's like Trevor Lawrence's safety blanket. Um, yeah, a guy like Parker Washington's gonna have to step up with Kirk out for the year. Brian Thomas been a stud, but not a great game in this one. Um, Hurts played good. Barkley, a big game in this one. 27 carry. He had obviously the big insane play where he like spun and backwards hurdle. That was insane. A lot of rushes for Hurts in this game. Devontae Smith, I mentioned, good game. He had that insane touchdown catch I mentioned. Barkley had a touchdown catch early on in the game. AJ Brown got hurt in this game, so he didn't really do too much. Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars were about 10 yards away from having the lead in this game. So, and look at like these, like, it's crazy that they could have won the game getting outgained by this many yards. And then the Eagles, I assume they get the field goal. That would have been even more additional yardage that they would have tacked on here. So the Jags almost won this game. And I mean, they certainly got outplayed. They just kind of went on a hot streak during the game that kept them in it. So the Eagles did deserve to win, but it was kind of it's not an ugly win, but it's a win that was a lot closer than it should have been. Yeah, just looking at the stats here, I think they're pretty telling of the game. The Eagles just outplayed them in most of these categories. Penalties were kind of killing. They're not killing them, but they get a clean set penalty. If they'd have won late, it was going to be 4th and 10, game on the line. They had a PI call on them at the end of the game there. I mean, yeah, they had 3 turnovers, the Jags, and the Eagles only had 1, and they're still the game is within 5 points. And a lot of it's probably because the things I mentioned, like Sirianni going for 2, he went for 4th down one time. They failed on it. So yeah, just kind of a weird game. The Jags they've been bad, but they've been competitive, and they've been right there. They almost beat the Texans. They almost beat the Packers last week, and now they're almost winning this game. So they're a bad team, but they're competitive too. So they're definitely a trap team. So maybe, the trap factor kicked in. I don't think Philly let up in this game, but I don't know. Just they were dominating, and then the game was close. So, but they were able to pull it off, get a win. So keep pace with the Commanders for the lead in the division, which it's weird just saying that now that we're over halfway done with the year that the Eagles are competing with the Commanders for the division lead. Would not have expected that. But yeah, Jags just going in the wrong direction. Eagles playing a lot better the past couple weeks, looking like the team that they have the talent to be just one of the elite teams in the league. Okay, I get some water here. My freaking throat is killing me. Talk about a weird game. So it was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, just defensive battle. And then the second quarter, the Rams were up 3-0. Just the Seahawks, they were struggling offensively. And my buddies keep texting the chat, just saying some funny thing. But anyway, yeah. Then the Seahawks, they got a touchdown. Like, it was late in the first half. It was, I think, on a free play. Yeah, it was a free play to Tyler Lockett, if I remember right. And then Stafford ended up throwing a pick, and then there was a bad sequence to the Rams at the end of the first half where the Seahawks got a touchdown right with a couple seconds left, and they were pretty far back. So that was just bad on the Rams. But the Seahawks did the same thing against the Falcons where they get a touchdown with a couple seconds left, a couple ticks left on the clock in the first half when it was just a bad sequence to the Falcons and just a bad defensive sequence and a bad defensive sequence to the Rams in this one at the end of the first half. But then the second half, the Rams their defense completely clamped the Seahawks up until that last drive where the Seahawks forced it to OT there. But yeah, this was just a really weird game. The second half, the Rams kind of pulled their heads out of their asses and started scoring. They had the lead. They just could not put the Seahawks away. And Geno Smith had a couple bad picks. 2 of them, I think, were right in the red zone. I think Stafford threw a pick, and it was like, all right, yep, Seahawks will tie this, and then Geno threw one right back. So he had 3 picks. Very mixed day. He was super clutch at the end of regulation there, that touchdown drive, but then he looked bad at in a lot of parts. It was like it was kind of reminded me of like a Jameis Winston like Bucks game when he was still the starter there. How he would put up like stats similar to this, but it's like he'd look good and then he would look bad. It was just very mixed. Stafford looked pretty good. The overtime drive there, they only, I think it was like 4 plays, I want to say. It was a really nice throw and catch, the touchdown to win the game for the Rams. They're getting hot. They've won 3 in a row. Seahawks have only won 1 game since they started out 3-0. They're, I mean, I think they still could get some wins together, maybe contend for the like the 7 seed, something like that. I think they'll definitely be contending for it. I don't think they'll make it, but they could finish 9-8, something like that around there. I mean, some of their losses have been close, so I mean they're a good team, they're a competitive team. I think they're going to play good teams tight, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to make it. Rams, I think, are going to end up making the playoffs. They're getting healthy. I think I predicted 10-7 for the Rams in my preseason predictions. That's looking pretty solid. Like that definitely is doable now. I think the Rams will probably drop a couple more games, I imagine. So the Rams getting healthy. They've been playing better football. Yeah, just yeah, Stafford good. Kyren Williams, a lot of carries, only for 69 rush yard. Blake Corum, 1 carry for -1 yard. Not an ideal game for him. Yeah, Cooper Kupp went off. Oh yeah, Puka got ejected after the Stafford pick that led to the Seahawks touchdown with a bad defensive situational touchdown at the end of the first half. So he got ejected, Puka, which he seems like a really level-headed guy. So that was a little surprising. Yeah, Geno in mixed game. Kenneth Walker, a lot of carries. Oh, solid game. JSN, really big game. Metcalf was out. So, he's going to step up there. Lockett played only 3 catches, but 63 and a touchdown. Pretty good there. Looking at the stats here. Yeah, it just kind of very weird game. The Seahawks moved the ball even when they weren't scoring. They moved the ball. It just they couldn't. Geno would throw a pick or just something would happen. Christian McCaffrey expected to make his return this Sunday. Oh, that's big. That is big for the Niners there. Yeah, rush yards, Rams only had 68. I mean, this game could have gone either way, even though the Rams had control. Felt like they should have been up more than they were in the second half. But yeah, these stats are pretty telling of the game. I think pretty close in a lot of these categories here. Yeah, 12 penalties for 95 yards. That's a problem. Rams 8 for 83, so they had to clean that up too. I thought the Rams were going to win at the end of regulation. Stafford was going to get them down the field, but they weren't able to, but they did in overtime. So yeah, this is a weird game to start, but it's just kind of a weird game overall. Seahawks were right there, and they just kept blowing opportunities to tie it. So that was just a weird game, but it was a good game to watch anyway. Lions Packers, this game did not go as I expected. I mean, a small part of me thought the game could go like this, but I picked the Packers. The game started off like I thought it would. Packers went down the field, scored. The Lions offense had a good game, but again, not like how they've been playing the past couple weeks, putting up points in like the 30s, 40s, 50s. I kind of expected them to score around 24, somewhere in that range. So at least I got that part right. But yeah, the Packers were up 3-0. The Lions scored 17 unanswered after that. Actually, I think they scored 24 unanswered. It was 24 to, yeah, I think they scored 24 unanswered after the Packers' opening field goal drive they had. Love had a bad pick six. That was just his mobility definitely was very limited by the injury, the groin injury he was playing through. He kind of had a mixed game. That pick was bad, but he had a couple passes that were pretty good. There was late in the game, Packers had a sequence where it was 2nd and 1, or I think it was 2nd and 1, Love scramble to the right, kind of a bad throw that could have gotten picked, kind of just put it out there for taking, just an unnecessary risk. Third one, they ran a play action. Love threw behind his receiver. I forget who it was wide open in the end zone. Then 4th and 1, they got stopped. So that was a big play there because there was still a good amount of time left in the fourth. It would have been a 2-score game. And then the Packers went on to score. So it would have been a 1-score game, too. And maybe the Lions, again, it's a what-if scenario, so maybe the game would have played out differently if they'd scored on that initial drive I was just talking about there, the 2nd-and-1 that they botched 3 straight plays. But who knows? Yeah, but Goff, he hasn't been putting up a lot of my chat's pulling up right now. But Goff hasn't been putting up a lot of passing yards, but he's been playing like historically well from a completion percentage point. There's just a bunch of crazy stats of how good the Lions offense has been with Goff's completion stats, just insane. Montgomery had a pretty good game in this one. He iced the game, was able to get a first down, so he just kneel the clock out. Good balance between Montgomery and Gibbs per usual. Amon-Ra had a touchdown, like a spinning touchdown catch. So that was insane. Laporta didn't really do too much from a receiving standpoint. Like again, from a receiving standpoint, besides Amon-Ra St. Brown, they didn't even really do too much, and they're putting up 24 points against I have 17 offensive points that pick 6, but 17 offensive points against like a pretty good defense and I'm sure they really needed to push the ball. They could have. So this number probably could have been even upped more. Especially, these guys, Goff and their backs and some of their receivers. But yeah, the Lions defense played pretty well. I'm surprised they didn't trade for a pass rusher, honestly, but their defense is playing really well even without Hutchinson. Love kind of talked about it, kind of a mixed day for him. Josh Jacobs had a lot of good carries in this game. Jayden Reed had a 4th-down catch I think it was Reed is the one not Watson, who Love missed in the end zone on that play there. The bootleg play, or the play action play rather. Yeah, couple good mix and balance of receiving here for the Packers. But yeah, I mean, if you just look at these stats, you would probably think the Packers win fairly comfortably. They outgained them here. They were better in a lot of these stats. One same amount of 3rd-down attempts, but Packers had one less. Same amount of 4th-downs. Packers had one more attempt conversions. I mean, if you just look at this, you would think the Packers won. Again, I think the big sequences in this game were that Love pick 6, and then the sequence where the Packers botched the 2nd-and-1, and Tom Brady talked about it in the broadcast how he didn't really like the play calling in that sequence, which it would have worked anyway if Love just hit the I think it was Jayden Reed, he hit him, on target in the end zone. But yeah, the Lions again probably they just play situationally very well at that. They knew they didn't need to. Obviously, they probably were trying to. Well, they were trying to score, I'm sure, but just the way the game was going, it was wet. You just want to probably be safe. You have the lead. Your defense is playing well. Just let's try to run the clock here, not do anything risky. But if they needed to, they probably could have. So these stats could have been a lot more. Just the way the game was going, they were playing to their defense and the conditions pretty much, I think. But yeah, just really, this is an interesting game. Really good win by the Lions. The Lions have to be favorites in the NFC to get to the Super Bowl right now, I imagine, the betting favorites at least. That would be an interesting matchup. Whoever, I think one of these two teams is going to win the NFC. So that's going to be interesting to see how their second meeting pans out, because last year when the Lions and Packers played in Lambeau, the Lions were up big. Packers came back a little bit, but Lions were able to hold on, I think, win by 2 scores. Then Thanksgiving, the Packers, I think, came in 4-6. They were dealing with injuries. Everyone expected the Lions to win, and the Packers won fairly convincingly. So that's going to be interesting to see how their second game goes there. Colts Vikings. So the Vikings were actually trying to hand the Colts the game, I think, in this one. The first half, Darnold threw 2 picks. One of them, he threw it like right to the defensive back. That looked bad. And I forget his other one off the top of my head, but and then they also missed 2 field goals in the first half. They had them outgained in yards. They had like their double the first downs the Colts had, and they were losing 7-0 at the half. But then the second half, the Vikings, kind of just cleaned it up, pulled their heads out of their asses. They scored 14 third, 7 in the fourth. Really good play call by Kevin O'Connell, that touchdown in the fourth. Colts thought they were going to run the clock, so Kevin O'Connell runs like a play action pass, and he can't remember if it was Johnny Munt or Josh Oliver, but it was one of the Vikings tight ends that caught the touchdown. Oh, that's the Colts. Yeah, it must have been Josh Oliver. Yeah. Addis bootleg was a Vikings ran a bootleg. Jordan Addison caught a touchdown. Vikings opening drive in the third. Aaron Jones had a pretty good or pretty half decent day. A couple of good running lanes where he burst through, looked pretty good there. Justin Jeff, they ran a trick play. It was 3rd and long. They ran like a trick play. Darnold threw it out to the left to Jefferson, and Jefferson threw it back to Aaron Jones on the right. They ended up converting that. I think it was 3rd and 13. Vikings defense played pretty good. Good bounce back points to them after kind of 2 not so great games. Joe Flacco, I think, looked better than the stats probably look here. Jonathan Taylor didn't really get too much going, but pretty decent day. Josh Downs, pretty good game. His stock probably is up with Flacco in there now. Alec Pierce, pretty good game. I mean, yeah, the Colts were up at the half. The Vikings were up playing then, and the Vikings were up. And then they were up 21 to I'm trying to think. Yeah, they were up 21 to they were up 21-10 after that touchdown, and the Colts got the field goal, and then they went for the onside. They kicked the field goal with like 30 seconds left, I think. Leave some time to get the onside. Weren't able to get it, even though I think it was like a perfect onside kick from the Colts. They just weren't able to recover it. It was like a perfect kick, like went the 10 yards, and I think it was Jefferson ended up corralling it in there. So that was insane. That was actually a really good onside kick attempt by the Colts there. Yeah, looking at the team stats, or did I? Yeah, all right. So yeah, I did all. Yeah, Pittman playing through his injury. That sucks because he's kind of a stud. Yeah, I mean, these stats kind of tell the story of the game. I think the Vikings definitely outplayed them, deserved to win the game. Yeah, I mean, these stats are pretty telling. The Vikings, if they didn't, just play super sloppy in the first half, they would have won by an even bigger margin. So yeah, Colts probably gonna try to clean this up a bit. Um, Vikings, I think one of them was in garbage time at the end of or technically not necessarily garbage time, so it was within 2 scores, and the Colts made it 1, but they got a PI call. Flacco threw a pick on that. They threw a PI call. I think that's where a majority of the penalty yardage came from there. But these stats, I think, are pretty telling of how the game went. Very interesting Sunday night game. Okay, sip of water here. Last game. So Monday night game, the Bucks Chiefs. So interesting game here. A lot of people thought the Chiefs would win this game comfortably. I thought that there could be a scenario. I think I predicted a 27-17 Chiefs win. So yeah, I thought there was a scenario where the game could go like this, where the Bucks they were in the game. The Chiefs, yeah, they got a field goal their second drive, and then the Bucks ended up they had a nice drive put together. Rachaad White got a touchdown. They were up 7-3. Then the Chiefs went down the field. They scored. They were up 10-7 at the half. Mahomes threw a pass in like triple coverage to Hopkins, and he ended up coming away with the with the football there. It looked like it was going to get picked off. Of course it didn't. I friggin' hate the Chiefs. I only wish it would have. Then that third quarter, the Bucks put together a touchdown on their opening drive. They were up 17-10, and then they forced a Chief punt. They sacked Mahomes. I think the Chiefs went 3-and-out on that drive. And then obviously there was a face mask call on Tristan Wirfs. It probably should have been a holding call. That completely stalled out the Bucks drive. It looked like a face mask like in real time, but then they slow-moed it in the replay. It should have been a holding call, not a face mask call. So everyone was on the refs for that. Of course, the Chiefs get being the benefactor of that bad call. And yeah, that saw the Bucks drive out. They had to settle for a field goal, and then the Chiefs just took over after that point. They scored it in the fourth to tie it up, and they scored again to take the lead. Bucks, it looked like they were done. They had to punt, and it looks like the Chiefs are just going to be able to get some first downs, chew the clock out. Bucks defense stepped up though, forced a punt, and Baker and company had a clutch drive, tied it with around 25 seconds left. Big talking point is a lot of people think Todd Bowles should have went for two. Obviously, Troy Aikman talked about it too, but in the booth while commentating the game. And I was fine with him sending the game to overtime, but I see why a lot of people would have or wanted him to go for two. I wouldn't have been opposed to it. But I think Bowles just said it's because the weather, and he didn't want it to come down to one play in case they didn't get it. And he thinks they could have beaten him in overtime, but or they could have won in overtime. Todd Bowles always has a tendency to be a conservative coach, so a head coach, I guess. Obviously, not so much schematically with his aggressive blitz scheme and such defensively, but seems to make a lot of questionable and kind of conservative coaching decisions. As a head coach, I guess, a lot of people obviously on him for the Godwin injury, even though I don't think obviously it's not his fault. Godwin got hurt, but a lot of people thought the game was over, so he shouldn't have been throwing. But technically, the game was still in play, so I mean, I don't blame him at all for that. If no one got hurt, or if Godwin didn't get hurt, no one would have said a thing about that. So just because Godwin unfortunately happened to get hurt. But yeah, a lot of people on him for not going for two. Chiefs got the ball in overtime, just drove straight down the field and scored a touchdown to win the game. Baker knew they lost as sure as the Chiefs won the coin flip. Of course, they win the coin flip. Wonder if they're complaining to the league office about the overtime rules like they did after we beat them in 2018 in the AFC Championship game. Sure, they had no problem with it now that it benefited them, though. Even though they did change the OT rules just for playoffs. Or if the same thing when they beat the Bills in the 2021 divisional round, where whoever got the ball last that game was going to win, and they ended up doing it. And no peeps, no crying to the league about overtime rules. Interesting. But when it goes against them, they go and cry to the league when they lose to us. But anyway, yeah, Baker played a pretty good game in this one. Not much in the run game from the Bucks really. Sterling Shepard had two jet sweeps that look good. Cade Otton's been a stud receiving since Evans and most of this year in general, but obviously since Evans and Godwin went down, they still get a decent receiving core even without Evans and Godwin. Honestly, I'm a little bit surprised they didn't try to trade for a receiver, but obviously it's going to be a big boost when Mike Evans comes back. Kind of a mixed performance in the Bucks defense in this one. Mahomes played pretty good. Hunt's been getting a big workload. He's probably friggin' beat to hell. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do when not Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Isaiah Pacheco comes back with him and Hunt. I assume they're gonna obviously keep Hunt, but they'll probably try to balance it out with him. And they also still have, at least I think they still have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think they signed him to an extension, if I remember right. He was like pretty good with them when they picked him in the first round in 2020. He was pretty good. And 21 too, I think he was pretty good if I remember right. Let me look this up. Yeah, he's still on the team. So interesting how they don't use utilize him a lot more. I would especially take some of the wear and tear off Hunt. 27 carries. I mean, he's in the 20 something carries the past couple weeks. So ever since they brought him back, Kelce pretty good game, picking it up past couple weeks. D Hop obviously good game, had that touchdown at the end of the fourth there that or towards the end of the fourth quarter that gave the Chiefs the lead. Chiefs obviously balancing, per usual. So we get the stats here. I mean, I think the Chiefs, the Bucks, it looked like the Bucks were kind of they might be able to steal the game, but then as soon as that the Chiefs scored after the to I'm trying to think. It was 17-10. Yeah, as soon as the Bucks had to set off that field goal and the Chiefs scored to tie it, it kind of felt like they were definitely going to win the game. But if the Bucks had scored a touchdown on that drive, it would have been very interesting. Chiefs probably still would have won anyway, but yeah, Chiefs exactly 100 more total yards than the Bucks. Yeah, I mean the Bucks had more yards per play though. Chiefs had 11 more first down. So a couple these stats are interesting here. So Chiefs outplayed them, but like a stat like this kind of shows the game was a lot closer than these stats may suggest by themselves. Who had the fumble for the Chiefs? I'm blanking. Oh God, I remember the Bucks getting the fumble, and I'm trying to think who had it. Completely forget. Was it Kelce? Maybe. I forget who had it. It might have been Kelce. Completely forget. Yeah, I mean the Chiefs hit the ball for 40 minutes. The Bucks hit it for 25. That's insane. Obviously overtime there. I think their drive was like 5 or 6 minutes or something like that too. So more so like 35-25 without OT there. I thought the Chiefs were going to drive down the field and get a field goal at the end of the regulation still anyway, because Todd Bowles called a timeout with 30 seconds left and they're down at the 1 yard line. That was not a good timeout usage by Todd Bowles. If anything, the Chiefs should have just used it because obviously if you stop the Bucks there, the game is over. They only have one timeout. You just kneel on the ball, assuming you don't fumble it or I know you're back to the 1 yard line, so you're just going to make sure you don't get a safety. But the Bucks only had one timeout, so if anything, the Chiefs should have called it, but Todd Bowles did. So another kind of questionable. He's getting a lot of criticism for clock management. Obviously, I talked about when Godwin got hurt, he got ripped for that. Again, not really. Don't blame him for that at all. Not his fault that he's throwing in that point of the game still. But yeah, and then the Bucks, Mahomes had back-to-back passes that could have been picked. Bucks would have maybe gotten field goal range to win the game. McLaughlin's been a stud for them. But of course, both of them get dropped with the Chiefs' luck. Mahomes had a sequence in this game where it looks like he friggin' tore his Achilles. And it was like, oh my God, oh God. So it's a good thing that didn't happen. He ended up limping off to the sideline, getting help, and then miraculously comes right out of the tent and he's fine. A little bit hobbled. I mean, Mahomes definitely, I think, milks injuries to sell, kind of to play the tough guy persona, but I just friggin' hate Mahomes. Maybe it's just bias, who knows, but yeah, I mean, some interesting stats here. Yeah, Bucks gotta clean the penalties up a little bit. Yeah, this is definitely a very entertaining game. Chiefs play the Broncos this week. That should be an interesting game. Not sure the Bucks play. Oh no, that's unfortunate for the Bucks with CMC coming back. Even without CMC, the Niners probably still would win that game. Who knows though? But yeah, pretty good week of football in this one. Yeah, pretty good week of football. A lot of good games. Some of the games how I expected. Some of them did not. Some weird games, like this one was kind of weird. This one was weird. This one was kind of weird. Yeah, just some pretty good mix of good football, kind of weird football, and bad football, I guess. So, yeah, pretty good week. Looking forward to this week. Haven't really looked at the schedule. I've been so busy, but it seems like just at a quick glance here, we get some pretty solid games this week. So yeah, I will wrap the video up here. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed, and take it easy. Hopefully you guys, again, as I always say, walked out with fantasy and bets and everything. Almost can't forget that part. But yeah, I will end the video here. Thank you guys for watching, and take it easy.